Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Andrei, and thank you all for joining us here this morning. I must confess, I am a bit of a geek, and I think what you do is so fascinating. It must be exciting to be basically the innovation gatekeeper in chief. I mean, on a daily basis, you see the fruits of Americans' innovation and creativity, the good, the bad, and the rotten, to continue the fruit analogy. Tell me personally, I mean, besides your illustrious career as one of the nation's foremost intellectual property attorneys, I mean, you're an aerospace engineer. You have a master's in mechanical engineering. Talk to me about the intellectual rewards and at the same time also the awesome responsibility of your job.
Well, thanks, and good morning to you and everybody else. Thanks for having us here and having me here. Yeah, it is an absolutely fascinating position to be in. As I say often, through the doors of the Patent and Trademark Office walks our future. We get at the PTO the inventors and the entrepreneurs who will shape the world tomorrow. And it is an awesome thing. And it is especially rewarding right now to have an opportunity. Having been in private practice for a good number of years, it is especially rewarding right now to have an opportunity to perhaps make a bit of a difference, change the dialogue a little bit, and increase the robustness of our innovation ecosystem.
You know, I thought it was really interesting the way Margaret mentioned that our founding fathers thought so highly of innovation and invention that they wrote the responsibility of the Patent and Trademark Office into the very Constitution. She also mentioned the milestone that you just marked about 3 weeks ago, 10 million patents. Why is that significant?
Well, so first of all, with respect to the Constitution, the forefathers were obviously brilliant, and they saw something remarkable, including this right in the Constitution itself. I actually believe it changed the course of history. It changed the world. It is so important that actually in the body of the Constitution itself, it is the only time the word right is mentioned. When it comes to intellectual property rights, that's where it's mentioned in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8. And it democratized invention. I actually don't think there is a coincidence that we are where we are here today, with all the advances in technology, in science, in medicine, vis-a-vis where we were 200 years ago. I don't think it's a coincidence, and I actually think that having this constitutional right played a huge role in that.
So that allowed us to leap ahead of, say, what was happening internationally?
Yes, absolutely, and what was happening for the course of history. So if you think about it, humans have been on this planet for thousands and thousands of years. Civilizations have been around the planet for thousands of years. We've had Greeks, we've had Romans, we've had Hebrews, and so on and so forth. And just about 150 years ago, 200 years ago, we would be sitting here by candlelight. We would be riding around in on horseback, just like they were thousands of years ago. Medicine was not very far along. We would be communicating by carrier pigeon or whatever, or foot messenger, just like they were doing thousands of years ago. The progress that we have made in the past 200 years is absolutely unparalleled in human history. And most of that has been backed by patents. With patents, we've made light. With patents, flight. We're treating cancer, telephone, everything. So to me, that says a lot about what the founders of the country did and the role the Constitution plays in this. The 10 millionth patent, I mean, 10 million is just a number. It's
a big number.
Not very different than 9,000,099, whatever. But it is an opportunity for us to sit back and celebrate and take stock of what we've done with our patent system, over the past 200-some years.
I'd like to transition to what we're here to discuss today, and that's really in the life sciences, as we're looking at innovation and invention. And it's a sector that's so different from some others, where perhaps one guy or one gal in a garage on their own can come up with an invention and patent it. I mean, particularly when we're talking about pharmaceuticals. Sometimes you've got a 10-year span there where you're doing research and development, you're doing clinical trials, getting FDA approval. How important is it that this field in particular, that the innovation area, I mean, it really has to have patent protection, does it not? And what are your particular challenges of the Patent and Trademark Office in awarding and granting patents in this area?
So, look, it's a very good question. I think patents are critically important overall to the entirety of our innovation ecosystem across industries. I think they are particularly important, as you have mentioned, in the biopharma space for a variety of reasons, but primarily for the reasons you have mentioned. It takes on average about 10 years, a little bit over 10 years actually, and over $1 billion on average to bring a biologic, for example, to market. And it is difficult to conceive that it could be done as efficiently and as effectively without the knowledge of those innovators and of those investors that their intellectual property and development will have some protection. So it is particularly important here, given the stakes.
And how do we ensure at the same time that patents, I mean, because they're essentially sort of a limited monopoly, that they don't stifle innovation and creativity? I mean, the overarching theme today is how do we strike that balance between rewarding the innovators, but then ensuring the development and really the access to life-saving, life-changing health discoveries?
Yeah, this is it's a complex issue. The key to the patent system across the board and here as well is to have balance. The whole basis of the patent system is a balance between the individual or the IP owner right to their IP versus the public's interest. So there's a constant balance. I should say, though, that patents, people talk about patents being a limited monopoly and the like. I actually think that patents are pro-competitive. So I think patents help in a variety of ways with development and competition. So first of all, as we've just mentioned, patents incentivize the investment and the original invention. Without them, we might have less. But once the invention is made and a patent exists on that invention, first of all, when you get a patent, you have to disclose what you've invented to the public. And then the public or your competitors will invest further. If you have a good invention, they will invest further to invent around your patent. And that competitive drive to invent around an existing patent moves society along and spurs further investment and further advancement. So it's a constant race to improve upon the prior inventions and developments.
So you don't see patents in any way stifling innovation?
On the whole, in the arc of history and in the aggregate, no, I don't. In fact, I think patents help tremendously with invention. Certainly, you can have localized abuses of the system, like with any other system, and we work to bring that balance and to eliminate any abuse that we see. But overall, as I've mentioned, I think patents only incentivize further innovation.
There were a couple of Supreme Court cases in 2012, 2013 that were somewhat controversial in the eyes of some patents in the life sciences field. Would you like to talk to me about the ones you consider the most important, the impact they've had, and if you would like to share anything with us about how the Patent and Trademark Office then works with stakeholders, to help them understand, okay, what's the playing field now that these rulings have come down?
Sure. So the two major cases in the past several years that affect this area of technology and science are Myriad and Mayo, two Supreme Court cases that deal with the question of patentable subject matter, in particular with respect to the biosciences space. So the question is, are there certain types of discoveries or certain types of technology, so to speak, that do not qualify for patent protection, even though they might be a brand new discovery and the like?
So I guess, is it the battle between, have you just discovered something naturally occurring in nature, or have you created something? Is that what it is? Okay.
Exactly. So it's a question of where do you draw the line between discovery and invention. For a long time in this country, the courts have said, we're not going to grant patents on pure discoveries of nature. So courts have been struggling where to draw that line. Myriad and Mayo, recently the Supreme Court has drawn the line in a particular way. That has caused, where they've drawn the line, that has caused some controversy. And the controversy comes to some extent from this industry, right? So, for example, diagnostic techniques nowadays have a more difficult time of getting patent protection than they did before.
Because of these rulings?
Because of these rulings. But also, these rulings have been subsequently interpreted by the lower courts in a variety of other ways that affect other industries as well. So they have had, in my view, certain unintended consequences, and they, in my view, have had an impact on the overall patenting ecosystem to murky the lines to some extent of what's patentable and what's not. And the courts and the industry in general were all struggling for any particular patent application, where to draw that line.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then I want our audience members, we want you to be part of this conversation, so start thinking about your questions, and we have mic runners, and so just raise your hand and they'll come to you. But just briefly, I know the CRISPR genome editing case still winding its way through the courts. You probably can't say a lot about that as a result, but is it illustrative at all of what is at stake with some of these patents and what your office wrestles with?
Sure, and it is biotechnology in general right now is one of the most prominent areas of growth and scientific development. There is a lot of activity going on there, hugely beneficial overall to the United States and to our population. With the biotechnology tools that have been invented and that are being invented right now, cures and treatments to cancer and a whole range of other diseases are being developed. And obviously, folks are trying to patent, they're trying to outrace each other, which really just illustrates the brilliance of this system. It provides, as Abraham Lincoln said, the fuel of the fuel. So well, I forget the exact.
But it was a great
somebody
quote.
here will know it's a fantastic quote. But it provides the incentive to the brilliance of innovation to keep forever improving upon what we have done, and CRISPR and all kinds of other modern technologies illustrate the brilliance of that system.
All right, let's go to our audience for questions. If you would raise your hand and identify yourself. We got someone back here. And please stand up, that way everyone can see you. Excuse me.
Good morning. My name's Tahir Amin. I'm from the Initiative for Medicines, Access and Knowledge. Thanks for hosting this event, which I think is very important and timely given what's going on with the drug pricing issues. As a practicing lawyer, I'm from England, but who's worked in the intellectual property field for over 20 years, both from a private practice and from a public interest practice. I see the points of that Director Iancu is saying about incentivizing. But do you think, given the evidence that is out there, of how pharmaceutical companies create masses and thickets of patents in order to preserve their business strategies. Is that the right incentives that we're trying to create in the system? And it's quite apparent that if you look at some of the studies that they have over, in Humera's case, of over 400 patents on a particular drug. And if the Constitution said that we want to progress the arts for limited times, is that limited times where you have exclusivity that could potentially run for 50 years unless challenged? So is that the kind of incentives that we're creating with the patent system today?
Thank you. Great question.
Yes, thank you for the question. I do think, as I've mentioned, that overall the patent system does provide the appropriate incentives. We always have to be careful to balance the various interests. So when we talk about follow-on patents, which I think is part of what you're referencing, patents that are applied for and obtained after the initial innovation and the initial development of a particular drug or biologic and the like, we have to make sure that that particular innovation that's being applied for in that particular follow-on application is itself innovative, non-obvious, and the like, and meets all these standards for patentability. Keep in mind that improvements to particular drugs or any other product are critically important to incentivize, just like the original drug, as long as the improvement itself is new and non-obvious. And that's the balance we have to make. And we do that at the PTO. We have the laws in place to make that, to draw those lines and to do the appropriate balance. And we do at the PTO on a daily basis with the original applications as well as continuation and follow-on patents. On a daily basis, we make those determinations.
All right. Next question. I see one back here. Lady.
Sure. Susan Finston, Finston Consulting. I think what's really interesting to note is that we actually did have an experience in the US in the early days of not having a national patent system. And then in 1793, the Congress changed from a state-by-state patent system to a national patent system because not having the ability to enforce patents across the entire United States was hindering investment and commercialization of new technologies. At that time, the President of the US signed every patent, and patents were viewed as critical to the development of a national economy, and in fact spurred US agricultural exports and the predominance of US agricultural exports, which is still the case today for a number of reasons.
Fascinating history. Do you have a question?
Sorry, I just wanted to support the idea that we've had the case study in the US of not having the patent system we have now, and it didn't work.
Thank you. Very interesting.
I should mention just briefly that patents at the beginning were signed by President Washington signed the first patent, and patent number 10 million was signed by President Trump, who is only the second president to sign a patent since John Quincy Adams.
All right. Last question.
I'm Mike Miller. I'm a physician by training, but in policy for about 30 years, and actually had a patent issued to me about 32 years ago.
Congratulations.
Non-commercial, didn't pay me anything, but it was an interesting experience, learned a lot. My question is, I've done a lot of work in the biopharma industry, and the issue of patent level playing field across countries, in particular around biologics. I was involved in the study that in the 90s, late 90s, that showed the effect of patent life for small molecules that then became the basis for the 12 years of data exclusivity for biologics here in this country. And now I know part of this administration's efforts around drugs globally is trying to get other countries to have sort of a similar intellectual property protection system. I'm assuming that as Undersecretary for Commerce, that may be part of your purview. Can you comment on that whole issue around getting other developed countries to have similar intellectual property patent protections in the life sciences?
Sure. Data protection, thank you for the question. Data protection is another form of intellectual property protection. It works in conjunction with patent protection, although it is separate and different to a large extent. And we do work internationally with our trading partners to encourage them to have similar protections for data as we do in this country.
We've run out of time before we close. I know you've all been wondering. The director did share with me that the President Lincoln's boat invention was a flop. Didn't work well. So thank you, Director Andrei Iancu, for joining us. Thank you all for your wonderful questions.
Thank you.